It is 8:05 in the morning, and we're going to scuttle our normal newscast for something we've been talking about all morning. For those of you who have been paying attention, you know by now that last week, the Mayor President's office dismissed Police Chief Thomas Glover from his role as police chief. And joining us this morning to give us his perspective on what happened is now former police chief of the Lafayette Police Department, Thomas Glover. Chief, thank you for joining us this morning. And you told us a little while ago that this is something that you've wanted to do for a while. You've wanted to be here in studio and talk to us during your 10 months as police chief. Why is this the first time that we're hearing from you?
I follow the policy. First of all, I want to say good morning to all your listeners.
Good morning.
And thank you for having me. But I followed all the policies of the Lafayette Consolidated Government, and they required anytime I did something with a credentialed media personnel or media outlet that I had to go through a process inside of the Lafayette City government, and I followed that process. And so I ask often to come on this show. A couple other media outlets in the city I asked about, but I never was able to do it. It's unfortunate that that occurred because other people were telling my story. I never got a chance to tell my story
From your
from my perspective. Other people told my story, and that's all over the city. When people meet me, they go, "Wow, we're glad we met you. We've heard so much that was different, and you're not like they said." For instance, look at the town hall meeting that I conducted on Wednesday night in city council chambers with council member Knockin. There were 50 or 60 people there. And when it was over with, they're like shaking my hand, complimenting me like, "We're glad we got you. You're a great chief, one of the best we've had." These are the kind of things they were saying to me. They were, "You're so tall," just all these things like this, great things.
Yeah.
And that's who I am. I was never allowed to put that side of me out. I always remain quiet because I'm quiet. I'm a very analytical person. I look at everything, but I do what I'm told to do if I'm hired to do a job, and that's what I did. But I can tell you, I made some remarks, I guess, on Friday to a local outlet when I said I felt like a thoroughbred who had a blanket and a regular saddle put on him, because I'm very, very proactive. I constantly sit down. Just 3 weeks ago, I submitted 6 bullet points of things that I wanted to do that would help curb violent crime, particularly violent crime among young people between the ages of 15, 16, and early to mid-20s. And never had a discussion on it, period. No response, period. So I'm very frustrated in that sense. I made one of the most important decisions I made in my life. I took a lot of time. I researched it. I moved here from Dallas after being in Dallas
For how long? Very long
over
time.
40 years.
Yeah.
Over 40 years. And I moved my wife and my youngest daughter here, spent a lot of money relocating, and after 10 months to be let go for no reason at all. And any reason that someone says was a factor in my release, I have documentation to show that it wasn't, not at all, even down to the crime rate. And I told you a minute ago that the crime data in the city of Lafayette is improperly kept. It's not correct. They're going
Were
back.
you in the process of changing
Yes,
that?
they're going back now. They've had some meetings inside the police department where they're trying to correct it. These are the things that people in the city don't know about. When you're fighting crime, particularly violent crime, which is, I consider myself an expert at, I studied this for 40 plus years. When you're fighting violent crime, one of the most important things you do is you triage it. There are 7 major index crimes in the United States that have been kept since 1930, and it starts with murder. So the most serious thing you do is you go after the murder rate. And we had 2 months in the city of Lafayette that threw our murder rate and our violent crime off. In May, we had 5 murders. June, we had 3. July, we had 3. August, we had 2. September, we had 1. So they're trending down. I wasn't measured on that. I was measured on, I believe, what May and June did, and you can't do that. And officially,
Continually, that was
Yes.
information that I received from several different people.
Yeah.
Was
When
that
you-
violent crime is going up, murder's going up, morale is down.
No, that's not. Well, it's very interesting that you bring up morale. When I was interviewed for this job last December 18th, I was told what was expected. one of the most important things was to change the culture.
Mhm.
And believe me, the culture needs to be changed.
Is it bad? What is it? Is it
There's
separated?
there's a small pocket of people inside the police department who covertly do things to undermine progress. There are groups of people who do whatever they can to deplete cooperation among the officers. And had I been confirmed, you would have seen some exits here in the police department because they were waiting around for me to go. And that's my only reason why I'm speaking out. A lot of people have told me, well, you don't need to talk. You're hurting yourself. You might get a job somewhere else. I don't need to work. When I came here, I'd invested very efficiently for 10 years. You know, I'm in the top 5% of earners in this country.
That's
so
great.
I don't need
So
a
you
job.
don't need a job.
I don't need a job. I came here, didn't know even what the salary was when I got here. And so my purpose is because I thought I could help and I believed I could help. And if you look at what I did in the community, I guarantee you I helped. I concentrated on making sure this community was not fractured, particularly after the grand jury decision came out in May. I made phone calls. I talked to people. There were people talking about going down to the federal court. We're going to do this. I'm like, no, give me a chance. We're going to change this paradigm. There will not be any reason for you to be upset about the police department not being transparent or us doing things to citizens that go unreported, or you being stifled in terms of having the ability to file an internal affairs complaint, which is one of the big things that goes on inside the Lafayette PD. And I am talking to an attorney right now, and at some point in time, I will be prepared to, if we go that route. I don't know. I don't want this to be adversarial or confrontational. I love Mayor Guillory. He gave me a job that was a chance of a lifetime. I have no problem with him, but I do think that he made a decision that was misguided. I believe had I've been his chief of police at re-election time, he would win hands down, no question about it. People all over this city would have voted for him. I believe if he had interest in running for national election or statewide, I would have helped him. I wasn't someone who came here as a novice. I came here with credentials and with skins on the wall all across this country, you know, serving as an expert witness in domestic violence for the Justice Department, been an expert advisor for the National Council on Juvenile Judges, having served in the state of Texas on the Criminal Justice Advisory Committee for State Senate, for things like that. I wasn't someone who wanted a job and just came here. There were people who talked to me. An ex-chief of mine first called me and told me about this job, and I started studying and reading, and I did a lot of reading. And on December the 18th, I shook the mayor's hand, looked him in his eyes, and said, if you have me as your chief, I promise you I will never be political. I'll give you 100% of my energy and my trust, and that's what I did.
Former
I worked
Lafayette
12 hours a day, 14 hours a day, 7 days a week. Yeah.
Former Lafayette Police Chief Thomas Glover is joining us in studio. So if you're just joining us, that's the gentleman you're hearing talking to us right now. So Chief Glover, what does this mean now for you? You said basically, let me make sure I understand, you're not kind of sure what the path will be, but
no, I'm not. I would like an amicable solution to this. I'd like to be able to sit down and talk and clear my name because there were some things that were documented on paper when they talked to me that were totally false, or I have documentation, emails that dispute them.
Dispute it?
Yes, that are official paperwork.
Is that about crime statistics? Is that about internal affairs? Is that a mix of it?
I can tell you I didn't know because I worked on this job for 9 months and never got an evaluation. I had been here 265 days at the time I was evaluated. I was called in, which means that my performance was impeccable, superb. So January, February, March, April, May, June, July, August, then September, I was called in to be evaluated. And there was information in that evaluation that was totally false. Totally false.
Can you elaborate?
My attorneys have told me to don't do a lot of talking on this, but I can tell you that I'll give you one big one. I was given information that I was overriding the applicant interview board and hiring people who the board had rejected to become police officers. And at the time that was told to me, only one person, since I've been here, had been rejected, and I had not gone back and overrode that decision and hired that person. In fact, by the time I was accused of that, almost 3 months had passed.
So that's patently false.
That's patently false, yes.
So they claimed that you went back and there were rejected candidates and you went back and hired these people.
Yes.
And you say, nope, that did not happen.
Did not happen at all. The fact that people say morale was low, when I was interviewed December 18th, 2020, when I was given an edict as to what was to happen, this is what I said. It's almost a quote. If I am successful at this, you'll know by the actions of the police department. And what was that? I said, when I first get here and start doing these things, they're going to spread false rumors on me. They're going to go all over the department saying things that are not true. That will not, be true, and I'll be able to live it down. Next step is they'll go to reporters and try to get false stories printed on me. And there was some where false information was printed, and I wanted to respond to them, but I wasn't allowed. And I say, you'll know that I'm successful, 100% successful, when this one thing happens. And what was that? And I said, when they say that morale is low and they want to give me a vote of no confidence, you'll know 110% that I have now achieved what you wanted. That's the playbook that police officers have been using in this country for 50 years. Go back and look at it. That's the playbook. And my department that I came from in Texas.
I was going to say, did this happen before?
They went through this. Cincinnati, Austin, everywhere in this country, Miami, Charlotte. This is how police officers do this. They consistently say morale is down, and we're giving them a vote of no confidence. And 85 to 90% of the time, votes of no confidence go nowhere. You check it out, look it up, research it. We got Google and all that other good stuff. Votes of no confidence mean that you're changing the culture. You're doing something that needs to be done, and people are resisting it. And Lafayette, might I add, is one of the last cities in this country to go through some of the, I call it rebirth. And if you go back and check all of my interviews, I would talk about 21st century policing.
Right.
That's how you police now. And, what the central tenet of that is taking care of the community. If we didn't have the trust of the community, if we didn't talk to people, if we were not out there when a crime happened, they do like people did 30, 40 years ago in New York. They go sit down. Police are not going to do anything. But because they know that the police are proactive, they've been a part of it, they have a one-on-one relationship with an officer, they'll call. Let me call Thomas Glover. Radar, hey, the person that committed this crime is so-and-so. Yeah, that's how you work. And that was resistance inside the police department. But, no, that's not even close to, what needs to happen here. And this city right now is on the verge of, I believe, going backwards from what I did. I really do. And I'm frustrated. I'm concerned. And I thought about this. I talked about it with my family, with my kids, my wife. I got legal advice. I got advisors in D.C. and Baton Rouge and South Texas that I talked to. And they're like, do what is right. And I have never in my entire career sacrificed my convictions for convenience. I don't do that.
Former Lafayette Police Chief Thomas Glover is sitting with us this morning and talking to us. We do have to take a break. When we come back, what is at the heart of it or what might be part of it? We're going to get his thoughts and his reactions coming up on Acadiana's Morning News. And Chief, we want to thank you very much for coming in and giving us the opportunity to talk to you.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up now on 819. You're listening to Acadiana's Morning News. Ian Ozan, Bernadette Lee here with you. If you're just joining us in the show, former Lafayette Police Chief Thomas Glover is joining us in studio, and he wants to talk. We asked him if he would like to come to the show. He accepted our invitation and agrees to talk about anything we ask about. There has been a lot of discussion that's gone on in the last couple of months about the firing of a police officer, and that this firing has led to some officers believing that they will not have anyone to stand up for them and that they feel as if they would not be protected if they did their job. What can you tell us about the incident that led to the firing of Officer Estrada, or can you speak about that?
Well, I'm not a Lafayette employee. I'm not in law enforcement. I'm a citizen, privately speaking about what I know. When I terminated Pablo Estrada the next day, which was my 43rd day in office, the police union came out asking that I be terminated. I terminated someone who I viewed as committing a crime on camera. Either one of you, Bernie or Ian, if you punched each other in the stomach and you call the Lafayette Police Department, it's a crime. And so that undercurrent, that excuse that they can't do their job because they don't know if they'll have the backing, if you follow the law, then you had 110% backing from me, from the city, from the entire police department. And I terminated someone who I viewed as committing a crime on camera. There are people inside the Lafayette Police Department who have met with the district attorney's office covertly convincing or trying to convince the DA that he was taught and trained to throw that strike, and he was. That's part of what we call the Monadnock defense system or Shepherd's defense system. Police officers all over this country are taught that, but you are taught to do that in self-defense when a person is attacking you, when you're trying to make an arrest.
And what was the suspect doing at the time?
He was handcuffed inside the locked jail. And in fact, the sheriff's department was a complainant. The sheriff's department is who filed a complaint on the officer.
Wow.
Yes. And the sheriff's department, might I add, has had half a dozen instances like that. And I got information in the file on all of those before I terminated this individual. And every one of those was severely disciplined. Terminations, resignations. One person was demoted and given a new assignment, and he quit in the next month or so. What I did was proper. I did consult with a use of force expert. People who were defending Pablo was trying to pin me up against the wall and ask me who it was. And I'll go on record. Right now, this is the first time I'll tell people. A director of a police academy in the Texas area who's a use of force expert, and a use of force expert in the state of Louisiana who works in the northern parish. And I looked at the video about 35, 40, maybe 50 times. I labored over it. I knew that I was terminating an officer who was a short time. He didn't have a lot of time. I didn't know what his family status was, but I had to separate all of that and do what's right.
Mm-hmm.
And when
you had to go with the law.
Yes. And when you make a decision to terminate someone about the use of force, there are two standards that go into play. And those two standards, the legal standards, are, first of all, your force has to be justifiable. And then it has to be, secondly, reasonable. It has to meet those standards. Mm. And if it does not, then there's something wrong. You can be justified in using force and then be unreasonable, and you still have, done some things that are wrong. And so I made a decision to terminate an employee of the Lafayette Police Department who threw a punch and struck someone in the stomach. The citizens can see it. After the video was released, I had nothing to do with it being released. I believe another law enforcement department had custody of it. After the video was released, there were people all over this country who contacted me and said, you did the right thing. And by the way, I'm astute enough in the media to know that everything that I say here is being recorded, mm-hmm. and it will be used at a later time to either mm-hmm. impeach me or to put me in a corner or push me up against a wall or bag me up or whatever. And I have no problems with that. I've done this a long time. They didn't know this, but I was part of a radio show in Dallas for 10 years straight. So I'm accustomed to using the media. I had the show was called Law Enforcement, a Call to Action, and it came on every Friday at 12 noon. Mm-hmm. And I've been extensively trained in the media. I came from the fifth largest media market in this nation, yes, almost 6 million people. Mm-hmm. And I think Lafayette right now is 125 or 122. 122. So mm-hmm. I was accustomed to dealing with the media. Mm-hmm. I knew how to deal with the media. Mm-hmm. I knew when to bring a story to the media. I knew when not to bring one. Mm-hmm. There were times when I was like, wow, I wish we could put this in the media to catch this person. But then I'd go, if I do, he's going to get away and somebody's going
Right.
to, so I knew how to do those things. But I am what I believe, like I told you earlier, the victim of politics. And unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to say a lot of things while I was chief of police. I am, if you check my educational background, my degree is in criminal justice and political science. I've been studying political science for 50 years. When I was a kid, people in the Dallas-Fort Worth area knew I was a politician. When I came here, I was asked about that, and I made a promise that I will not get involved in politics.
And you did not,
I
and
did
you
not.
followed the rules
That's right.
that were set
Consistent.
forth.
Yes.
Because if you wanted to speak and come on a show or come on this show, you had to follow the chain of command.
That's right. I had to submit any request like that through our communications department, and it was either approved or denied.
not. Mm-hmm.
And more often than not, they were denied.
Do you know why they were denied? Did they ever give you any reason?
No, I don't, but people have told me, had I gone on radio, TV, or been allowed to do some of those interviews, people would have gotten the truth and they would have known who I was. I don't put an R behind my name. I don't put a D behind my name for party. I told some people that I spoke to here, a group of influential pastors on the south side of the city called Kingdom Huddle, that I do have a D behind my name, and it means do not know and do not care what my party affiliation is. I do not practice policing that is party-based, gender-based, race-based, or anything, and I've been accused of that. And what people didn't know, when I told people I was coming on KPL, they go, you going on there? You know, I'm like, guys, go check my history. My best friend, one of my best friends, is the most conservative Republican lobbyist in the state of Texas. And I worked for him for 22 years. I've been in Austin, in my state capital, lobbying. So
Yet another reason why people need to sample KPEL.
Yes,
so thank you for that.
And so my thing is, people had these notions about who I was, and I wasn't allowed to dispel them. There was a newspaper story that came out in late April, May, that said that in my time that I had placed an astronomical number of people on administrative leave.
Yeah,
during my entire tenure with the Lafayette Police Department, at the time the story came out, I had placed 2 people on administrative leave. One of them was an officer who violated a policy that required that he be placed, and the other one was a use of force instance. Within the last month, I placed someone on administrative leave for misconduct. So at the time the story was printed, there were 18 people on administrative leave, or 8 total of whatever. I put 2 of them up there, but I was given the credit.
The other ones came from or came from supervisors?
I don't. Oh yeah, they were there before I got here.
Okay, gotcha.
Yes, they were there.
I just want to.
So we had 18 people totally on leave, and I was responsible for 2 of them.
For 2 of those.
To 2.
And we are speaking with former Lafayette Police Chief Thomas Glover, who joins us. So if you're just joining us, that is who is in studio. Again, that's former Lafayette Police Chief Thomas Glover, talking now as he can to talk about some of the different issues. We have more coming up.
Yeah,
Yes.
our friend Wallace Senegal's trying to call in, and Wallace is one of the community leaders on the north side of Lafayette. So Wallace, we'll get to you as soon as we can, but we do have to hit the break, I do believe.
We do. It's coming up now at 8:31. You're listening to Acadiana's Morning News. We are speaking with former Lafayette Police Chief Thomas Glover, who came in to talk with us about a variety of different issues surrounding police issues. Okay, one of the things in the last couple of months that people have talked to me about is a situation with Captain Brown. The allegation that was presented to me several times from a couple of different sources is that Captain Brown was basically taking security jobs away, the private detail security jobs away from 2 other officers, and that he was trying to charge more for the same type of work. The 2 officers then would basically, give a different rate to one of the clubs that they worked for. And Glover made it so these people were not able to work the private security jobs. What do you say about the situation with Captain Brown?
That is totally false. That is totally false.
Okay, tell me from your perspective.
There are 2 issues dealing with Captain Brown. The first one was an individual who came to the police department and filed a complaint on January 4th, saying that Captain Brown intervened in a civil matter.
Yes.
And intimidated him.
And we know who, and I'll come back to that thought in a second, but go ahead.
And intimidated him.
Okay.
They brought the complaint to me, I believe, on the 10th or the 11th of January.
Okay.
I assigned it to Internal Affairs, and I put a name on the bottom sheet of the paper who I wanted to investigate it. It was a lieutenant who headed Internal Affairs. After I got a report that the gentleman had been contacted by phone and said that this had only happened one time with him and Captain Brown, I then got made aware of a video from a body camera. Nobody knew that. I think I still have a copy of the flash drive or whatever. I may not, I don't know. And if you're listening to me, Lafayette, yes, I did have a copy of a flash drive that I lost. But it had a picture, it had a video, I believe, over 10 minutes, maybe 11, 12, 16 minutes of the interaction of Captain Brown with this gentleman. And there's a third officer whose body camera is shooting this. Everything that the man said on camera did not happen. As a chief of police, I'm thinking, okay, we're going to spend time and taxpayers' money investigating something that I have a body camera video that shows didn't happen. So I said, okay, it's unfounded. I have that ability. People don't understand it. As a chief of police, I can make a decision regarding something as long as I'm transparent, as long as I don't cover it up. And I did not. I had a body camera. The body camera was presented as evidence to the Civil Service Board. Yeah, so they could show that one was over with. Next, let's go to what happened at the club, CNR Club. I'm calling the name. When I got here, I started getting information about the CNR Club. Late January, early February, 2 council members, Glenn Lazard and Pat Lewis, talked to me after council meeting and say, we got this club and here's what's going on. February the 14th, if you go back and look at, it was an ice storm.
Right.
I was in the EOC for the police department, and we have cameras all over the city, hundreds of them, and they zoomed in on CNR Club, and I'm sitting there looking at what's going on. And they're cooking, barbecuing, violating the ordinances on serving food and all that. 2 weeks later, a council member whose district and Captain Brown, who was in charge of that precinct where it was at, ride out to the location of CNR Club, and they point out where is it. I get a geographical picture in my mind of what it's like. And then I had 2 citizens to come and meet with me. I got calls over and over about the people going to the club, urinating, defecating, trashing. And so I instructed, as a chief of police, Captain Mike Brown, to put together me a file on it. The DA has that file now. It's thick. It's about 5-6 inches, a big notebook of everything that went on in that club. Early March, maybe middle March, I said, I need you to conduct an ops at this place, and whatever they're doing wrong, take care of it. He went out there 2 times in March, the 2 Saturdays at the end of the month. Both times I went out. The last time I was out there, an officer got on his siren and started hitting buttons, trying to run people out. Captain Brown walks over to him and tells him to quiet down. A minor infraction in terms of an altercation occurs verbally. Captain Brown comes in 2 days later to file a complaint on this young man. He files a complaint on Captain Brown. Captain Brown also files a complaint on the individual's spouse, who was also a police officer.
Yeah.
At that point in time, I had just created a public integrity unit, which is an officer who investigates criminal misconduct where a police officer is involved. I immediately sent the case over to him, had him to investigate it. He came back and said, there's nothing to this criminal case on this officer. But then she turned around the next day or near future and filed a complaint on Captain Brown and said, I'm not the one that's on the take. It's Captain Brown. I do the same thing. I sent it to a criminal investigation.
The case against Brown.
Brown. Send it to a criminal investigator. The officer investigates. He calls in people associated with the club, and there's nothing there. There's no there like they said. At that point in time, the case it's nothing to it. It's unfounded as a criminal case, but the case was still sent to the DA's office for transparency to get something in the way of assurances that what you did was right. There's nothing there. The rumor that's going around is that I was covering for Mike Brown.
Yes, that's the rumor that's
I'm the
around.
person who instructed and ordered a criminal investigation on him, and then after that criminal investigation was complete that found nothing, I'm the person who made sure that it was followed up, and so it went to the DA's office for review. and they are making it look like Captain Brown was under investigation by the DA's office. That's not the case. The Lafayette Police Department's public integrity section investigated and found nothing, and then it was forwarded to the DA's office. And in the spirit of disclosure, at the time it was forwarded to the DA's office, I was not at work, but I was made aware of it and had no issues with it. And so the narrative on that is totally wrong. And get this, the same people who are going after Captain Brown, who are the citizens, you got a young group of people who are promoting hip-hop clubs, a lot of marijuana, a lot of violence goes on in that area.
Okay.
And they tried to get him in trouble. If you remember the district shooting, I closed the district down, and after I closed it down, those same individuals started trying to get me fired too because I closed the district. And it's a lot of money involved in this. We're talking $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 in cash a week. And when I closed the district down because of the violence that occurred there, I would have done it anywhere. Had it happened at the local grocery store and 150 shots or more fired, a police officer involved and almost got his life taken, someone is assaulted. And I'm like, that's what I do. And so what you're hearing about Captain Brown is totally untrue. They had a rumor out saying I was covering for him. I also said I was living with him, and I went home and told my wife that, and she fell out the chair laughing and say, Thomas, you don't even like staying with me and the daughter sometime. I know you're not going to. And at the time they made this accusation, I was renting a short-term lease, I guess from a very prominent person in the city. I'll leave it at that. I was renting, so.
Why were you renting?
Because I had just moved. This happened when I first got here. I lived in a hotel for 2 weeks, and then I left the hotel and stayed at another location for a month and a half.
And then your family came over after that?
My family came over when I was living in a hotel.
Okay.
Yeah. And so my point was there were allegations that I'm renting or leasing or living with a captain who's a subordinate on my police department. First of all, I'm not that stupid. I think I was underestimated when I came here. I'm very, very politically astute. I'm media savvy. Everything I say and do, I think about it. I don't even play dominoes because people say I take too long to count.
Make your decision?
Yeah, I think of every move. I know it's going to happen by me doing this show. I know it's going to happen. I'm going to face some other attacks. People are going to come up and say some things. I understand that. But I'm big enough that if that happens, then I have a retort for it.
Former Lafayette Police Chief Thomas Glover joining us, and I want to get into Captain Brown a little bit more, but
I
know
do too.
You want to jump in.
And with the Captain Brown situation, the
I want to go
individual who filed the complaint about the civil matter, the first point you made when we brought this up, this person is well known in the community, especially in political circles, and he is politically tied to some people who have some power inside Lafayette Consolidated Government. Do you think he had some role in your dismissal, whether through influence or getting into the ear of the mayor-president? Do you think that person may have ultimately instigated your firing?
I can tell you I do not believe that I don't know. I've met him. I've sat down and talked to him. I've been in his office. We've shook hands. He knew who I was, and I think he understood what my edict was that came down from the administration. So the individual who filed it, he straight up told me out of his mouth sitting 2 feet apart that he wasn't filing a complaint against me. That's what he do. I understand what he did, but I can tell you right now, there is no misconduct there. There's nothing there. I guess what's funny about this is that there's evidence to prove this. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to what people are saying. Say, give me a copy of the criminal case that was filed. It's out there, and I know you probably won't be able to get it because it's still in review with the grand jury or with the DA's office, but ask for it. That was investigated in-house by an officer who I personally picked to put him in the public integrity position. Number one, because I watched him for 2 months, and he was apolitical. When it came down to taking sides, he was non-assuming. He's very fair, very spiritual guy. He's very well known in the community, and so I put him in the public integrity position specifically to investigate any criminal complaints made against a police officer. When I got here, there was no such position. That position, by the way, I understand has been targeted to be eliminated. I think we need it. I do think we need it. I started a compliance position. What I did when you use force on a person, you're required to fill out what is called a use of force report. I started noticing my first 4 months, 2 months here, that the use of force report would say something, and then occasionally it wouldn't be documented on body camera. So I specifically put a position in place to where every use of force report that comes into me, I immediately funnel them over to this person. His full-time job is to sit there and review the body camera, then determine whether or not it matches a use of force. There have been a few occasions where I have to send something to internal affairs because of that, but that individual was chosen because every time I saw him before I put him in his position, he was quoting general orders and policy to me, and Chief, they can't do that because of this, General Order 219.05. And so when I thought about the compliance, I'm like, that's the person. And I can tell you this, I'm shocked that Lafayette Police Department did not have someone who made sure there was an inspection process or compliance. Ultimately, it's up to me as a chief to do it. But with my schedule, I can't sit there and do it. So I appointed someone, selected someone to do it and put him in that position. I understand it's been targeted for elimination. And so things that I did in the police department to make us better, to keep us out of the news, to give us a refined national image, if they are turned back, the citizens of this city are going to be in trouble. And that's all my concern was. People don't know this, but the Lafayette Police Department potentially could lose millions in liability claims against it. And some of it is in the area of driving, having accidents and wrecks and stuff. And I'm sitting there like, as a chief of police, I can't allow that to happen. And every
So what are we talking about there? Have there been a lot of crashes? What are we talking about?
I think for a department this size, in the number of miles we drive per year, on a percentile, it's a little high. One of the things that I never got into was there's research all around the country that shows that officers who work 12-hour shifts have a higher propensity to get into crashes.
Okay.
Because the human body can only function for so long. And so I made it known that I didn't think that 12-hour days were efficient. Since that time, there's been thousands and thousands of pieces of data that have come out. We're going through an internal study that will demonstrate that the 12-hour shift is the most inefficient for the city of Lafayette. And what I mean by that is every Friday and Saturday, we have over 40 people that are off on a 3-day weekend. And because of that, they're off. We have less availability of officers. So we got to call officers in, put them on overtime, do this, do that, do this, do that. If they were working 10-hour shift, which is what I want, is no secret, it cuts down on the overtime. And there's documentation out there, scientific documentation to actually support this. There's scientific documentation from research done inside the Lafayette Police Department to support that the 12-hour shift cost the citizens of Lafayette the most money in overtime. I was going to institute 10-hour shifts. That was one of the things I was going to do. And I knew that I was going to come under heavy attack for that. So everything that needed to be done, I was going to do it. But I waited, and I was waiting until that study was completed, and I was going to implement it. But I would have scientific data to back it up, and they would know it wasn't just a whim.
Why was there so much kind of fight back, if you will, or from going from the 12-hour to the 10-hour shift in terms of what you heard?
A large majority of the officers in the Lafayette Police Department work what we call off-duty security, moonlighting. And it's no secret they make thousands of dollars a month on that. And if the shift would go from 12 to 10, it would have some type of attack on their ability to work and make money. But I always told people that your number one job is Lafayette Police Department, not the ODS. And people who make economic decisions to purchase houses and buy cars and go on vacations based on off-duty security are totally unaware, because you could break an ankle or leg anytime and you can't work that ODS, and you wind up losing your house and car and going into financial ruin. But that's the kind of thing I was doing, what's best for the city. And the majority of the officers who are this department is great. They have a lot of good people here, but I told you there are 20 to 25 people who do things, and they start at the top leadership in that department and go all the way down to the street level on people who are in this little circle. A lot of them are in the union leadership and tied to the police union. And by the way, some of the statements that I made when I was selected and being interviewed centered around, I can't allow the union to control the department. And I did not. Every decision I made was based on what was right, what was justified, and what was best for the citizens and was best for the majority of the police officers. And I did get blowback on a lot of it, but that was expected. You can't change a culture without upsetting people. I'll give you a good example. The use of tobacco, smokeless tobacco, which we commonly call snuff, and chewing tobacco. I've probably gotten a half a dozen complaints from people who would say, Chief, your officer was talking to me, taking a report, and every 30 seconds they would hold their head to the side and spit. Or they had a dip or a chew in their mouth. Totally against the rules of the city of Lafayette, against the police department rules, violation of policy and general orders, and people would still do it, and there was no accountability. And I started saying in the last month or two that if people are violating the rules and they're not written up for it and disciplined for it, I'm going to start calling the supervision and the chain of command is to say, why is this person allowed to chew tobacco in your presence in this building on a call that you show up on? And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. 2 weeks ago, I had an officer chewing tobacco on body cam. Supervisor shows up. Guess what? The supervisor has tobacco in his mouth. I went livid, and I said, something has to be done about this. So the fact that I was constructive in how I worked the department, I did what was best, I was moving them forward, I got a lot of blowback from that small group of people.
Former Lafayette Police Chief Thomas Glover is joining us. I'm just kind of curious whether or not you have talked to former Lafayette Police Chief Toby Aguillard.
Not since this happened, but prior to it, when I first got in office, I spoke to him. I've spoken to former interim chief and former deputy chief Reggie Thomas a lot. In fact, weekly, sometimes 2-3 times a week, and I want to thank him because he's given me some of the best guidance ever in order to maneuver through this position.
Okay.
He's very skilled, an individual who probably should have been chief of police, but he actually got treated the same way I got treated. And to be honest with you, I didn't think this was going to happen. I should have been confirmed after my 6th or 7th month based on what I did, my performance. And anybody with common sense will know that if I'm working on a job for 9 months and if I'm doing something so bad that I get terminated after 9 months, it would have been evident and relevant in my first 8.5 months. And there was nothing there. That's why I was never called in for any type of evaluation, counseling, coaching, in areas where I was deficient because there were none. I'm a skilled criminal investigations person. I have extensive experience in community policing, and people saw that. You put me on a microphone in front of people, I can express myself. I can make them feel that what I feel, and that's empathy and sympathy, and that I'm going to do what's necessary.
So all politics ended up smashing into this?
I think so.
Do you think the club that was referenced before, or the owners of that club, because you would reference something about marijuana at these clubs. Can you elaborate on that at all? Are you willing to elaborate on that?
I'll just say this with my guard up. I've entered, since I've been the chief of police, one location that when I walked in, I couldn't hardly see, and the marijuana smoke was so strong that I had to turn around and walk out. I needed a mask, and I'll say that it was a club or a location that came on my radar from me being the chief of police. I'll leave it at that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so the politics at the end of the day, I know you said at the very beginning of our conversation that you don't know what you're going to do yet. What do you know yet what your options might be?
I would like to have my case either arbitrated or mediated or whatever. I think I'm due some type of compensation. They will probably disagree with that, but I spend in excess of $40,000 relocating to Lafayette, buying furniture, appliances, electronics, housing, things like that. And I traveled up here 4 times before I took the job, going through the application process. Stayed at hotels, travel expenses. And I walked away last Thursday with nothing, zero, zilch. And I don't think that's proper. And, I want to do whatever is necessary in order to make sure that there is no confrontation, that the relationship is not adversarial. Based on me talking to the media, they probably will, but I can tell you, Bernie, every single thing that's happened to me in the last 4 to 5 days, I scripted it out. That's what I told you, down to me being called in and terminated. City managers and mayors all over the country do it the same way. They call you in. They tell you that they have no confidence in you, which is what was told to me. Don't tell you why. Then at that point in time, they strip you. They go and get your phone, your laptop, computer, and that's exactly what happened to me. At the time I was terminated, people were waiting at my office door to get in, to get my laptop and any kind of materials and documentation that I have. My phone was seized, those type of things. And that's what I'm saying. They stripped a badge off me right there in the office. They took the stars off my collar, and they actually asked me for the weapon. And I said, no, this is my personal weapon. It doesn't belong to Lafayette City government. I said, your Glock 40 is at my house. By the way, they rode me and followed me to my house to get all the property.
To get it and pick it up.
And I thought about denying them and said, no, I'll bring it in. You're not going inside my house or whatever, but that's not who I am. But they did all of that, strip my gun belt off, everything. And I looked at them and said, guys, I was your chief of police an hour ago, and you're going to denigrate and degrade me like this, walk me out the front door, you strip, and they go, Chief, out of respect, no, we're going to pull the vehicle around to the rear and let you walk in. But that script, I've seen it happen. I told you I was a police officer who was a politician and a politician who was a police officer. And that is probably the way they train city managers and CEOs all over the country, because they do the same thing. When I was called in and given this makeshift evaluation about 10 to 12 days before my termination, I turned to the human resources director and I told him that they're trying to make a case to get rid of me. Something happened in the last month or so of my employment where they are, now it's time to get rid of me. Even though I was told when I first got here that I was brought in as a ruse or a scheme to make sure that everything was okay after the grand jury decision. I don't believe that, because there were other people on the search committee, community people. Councilwoman Liz Hebert was there, other community leaders, Pastor Bobby Richard. These are people who are independently capable of making decisions. And I came out of those interviews with strong recommendations. Sheriff Garber was on the committee, a member of his staff, and so my resume speaks for itself. So even if that was the initial thing, I was the best person. I'll say this, and I'm going to piss some people off if I can say that on the air.
That's okay. That's why we invite people to the show. We want all
right
the
now, there is no one inside the Lafayette Police Department that is more qualified to be chief than I am, based on what I've done in my history, based on what I know and how I work and my abilities and my capabilities. No one. And I can back that up. The leadership training, the schools, the educational background, the experience. There's nothing that's happened in Lafayette that I haven't lived before. Even this little surge in violence. That's why I wanted to use the media. I put together a top 10 of the most wanted criminals in Lafayette. By the way, we've gotten them off the street. Some of them bonded out or whatever. I heard a lady on this morning from the Well, and I know Terry Gore. I was getting ready to start a human trafficking task force.
We need it.
Terry was going to be part of it. The chairman of the Greater Lafayette Crime Commission was going to be a part of it. The Sheriff's Department, me, and that was going to be announced this month. And by the way, October is National Domestic Violence Awareness Month. It's also National Crime Prevention Month, and so this is the month strategically to break out a lot of things. I didn't get it. I hope that they push on, and because
I hope they do too, because we have a real problem with domestic violence.
And we have a problem with the trafficking. It's not enforced.
Yes, the trafficking is a problem.
Anytime you got two major interstates, 49 and 10, you're going to have traffic.
Absolutely.
Truck stops, things like that. So there were major list of things that I wanted to do, several of them, and I didn't get a chance to do them.
Former Lafayette Police Chief Thomas Glover, I want to thank you. We have to start wrapping up here. Will you stay in Lafayette for now?
I am not sure. It's going to depend on what happens to me. I've been approached by some very influential people about running for office. I'm not sure if I'll do that. if the chief of police's position is made pursuant to the charter an elected position, I may decide to do that. But I love Lafayette. I want the people to know that I think it's a great city. I enjoyed the time as a chief of police. It was an honor. Thank you for serving. I have no bad or ill feelings about this city. I love it, and that's why I was hurt, and that's why I'm talking, because I want people to know what I had laid on the table, what I was about. The rumors that you're hearing are not true, and I can promise you they'll grow now that I've come on your show and I've addressed your audience. They will grow. They'll start saying other things, but I can dispel them. I keep a little black bag full of things. You know, I have communications, and if my phone was clean and scrubbed, if my computer, and by the way, I never used a laptop, not one time, so they won't get anything off there. I have copies of things that I did. That is my personal stuff. I take very good notes. A lot of times I won't do it in front of you, but I have probably, 8, 9, 10 things in my possession right now in the trunk of my car. So I'm not someone who walked in here naive and loaded with instability. I felt like I was going to be here at least 3 years, the full 3 years of the mayor's first term. And at the end of that, people would see what I've done. They'd see what he'd done in bringing me here, and it would be a shoo-in. All sides of the community I love. I'm not someone who polices based on race or gender, whatever. I love all people, and I police with all people. And there are people all over the city will tell you that when they looked at me and saw my heart, they was glad I was chief.
Former Lafayette Police Chief Thomas Glover, thank you for coming here and talking with us. This will be an ongoing conversation, I have no doubt.
Yes.
But thank you for doing this with us.
Thank you. I'm appreciative of you for having me.
We appreciate you coming in, taking the call yesterday, and we hope to have you back in here soon.
Thank you.